Okay, so we're wrapping up progressivism here at the end of Unit 2, and there's just a few things left to go over, specifically about our three presidents during the progressive era, all three of which we have already talked about, so it shouldn't be completely new information. The first is obviously this wonderful man right here on the slide, Teddy Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt's progressivism was all wrapped up in his domestic policy, which we already talked about, which is called the square deal, a square deal for every American, basically ensuring that every person had an equal shot in life in the United States. Now, we already talked about his foreign policy, which, if you remember, was called big stick diplomacy. But the square deal was more about putting things in place, putting laws and programs in place that would create an even playing field. He wanted to bring down the bullies of America, whether it was government or major corporations or what. Now, there was definitely, no president has ever had a perfect plan, and there's definitely some places where Teddy Roosevelt could have improved, and he did not support African Americans and civil rights and reform and progressivism in that capacity as much as he should, nor did he quite endorse women's suffrage as much as he could have when he was president. But nevertheless, he focused a lot of his work on the economy, on industrial reform, and on conservation. So first, the economy stuff, he definitely believes in free enterprise, so he wants to see trade flourish, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily believe in laissez-faire. He definitely believes in regulation. He wants to destroy all those bad organizations and corrupt businesses that are controlling the market, that are creating monopolies and bad trusts and things like that. He wanted the government to serve as like a watchdog to prevent things like that from happening, and he thought that, if we put public pressure on this and really expose it for what it was, that slowly these abuses would phase out. So we've had the Sherman Antitrust Act on the books for quite some time. Teddy Roosevelt is actually going to be the first president to really use it for what it was designed for, which, if you remember from last unit, is to bust up bad trusts. Teddy Roosevelt is really going to make it his mission to bust up trusts. He got the nickname the Trust Buster. In his time as president, he broke up 44 trusts. And he continuously sided with labor unions, actually, which is something that was really unique. In the United Mine Workers strike, Roosevelt had asked the owners to agree to federal mediation between the union and the employers, and the employers didn't work. The mine owners didn't agree to the mediation, so Teddy Roosevelt threatened to send in federal troops to help the strikers. Normally, when we see troops get sent in to a strike, it's to send the strikers home and arrest people, but he threatened to send in federal troops to help them. So it really shows he's willing to talk the talk, but definitely walk the walk as well. And we see a massive impact from the square deal. One of the things I said was conservation was a huge thing for him. You can see this photo of him in front of this giant oak here on the left. He passed in 1902 the Newlands Act, which was a federal grant to fund the creation of dams, canals, reservoirs, to help create hydroelectric power plants in the West, which was all badly needed by Western cities. It's not nearly as populated in the West, and we haven't been able to provide power to everyone who lives in the West yet. But you can use water and harness the energy and power from the flow of water to create electricity, and that's hydroelectric power. And so he's going to find federal funding to build things to provide power to people who live out west. He's also going to pass the several conservation acts, which would set aside millions of acres of lands for national parks. That's one of the things he's most remembered for. If you remember, I said that in the Natural History Museum in Manhattan, the lobby is wall-to-wall quotes from Teddy Roosevelt about the importance of nature and history and natural history and taking care of the environment around us. He also passed the Pure Food and Drug Act, which required truth in labeling, meaning that companies can't put fake information on the label. They can't say that it cures cancer if it doesn't, and they can't say that it contains I don't even know, fairy dust if it doesn't. They can't lie about the ingredients. If there's alcohol in it, they have to say there's alcohol in it. And in 1906, he also passed the Meat Inspection Act. This was obviously inspired after he read the book The Jungle. This forces cleanliness in our meatpacking industry to make sure that no one's going to be getting sick from bad meat. After Teddy Roosevelt was president, William Howard Taft was president. If we remember him, we first met him during the American-Filipino War. He was the first Governor General of the Philippines and helped us get that two-part strategy in place to win the war. So he was sort of like Teddy Roosevelt's endorsement, and they're both Republicans, and Taft was sort of the next logical step. Roosevelt was like, this is the guy for the job. He's going to pick up where I left off. Everyone loved Teddy Roosevelt, so they were like, absolutely vote for Taft. So Taft was overwhelmingly elected, and he's going to try and do a lot of the same stuff as Teddy Roosevelt did, but unfortunately he just won't be as successful. He definitely tried to bust up trust. He'll file over 90 trust suits while he was president, and he was only president for 4 years. He's going to issue the first tax on corporate profits. He's going to make mines safer for workers. He's going to use the ICC to regulate telephone and telegraph companies. He's going to lower the workday to 8 hours. So he's definitely going to get a lot done. But a lot of people were not as happy with his work as they were with Roosevelt. You can see in this political cartoon, it says he's going the wrong way. All these steps are Roosevelt steps going forward, and Taft looks like he's, stepping in his footprints, but he's going backwards. It says in Teddy's footprints, sure, but he's like going backwards. So a lot of people just didn't feel like he was doing all that they needed to do. Now that was what he was doing at home. Abroad, Taft had a different approach to foreign policy. His foreign policy he called dollar diplomacy. He wanted to use money to be diplomatic. And if you remember, diplomacy means to be like friendly with other nations, whether for, personal reasons or whatever, whether it's for personal gain or, just like common humanity. Dollar diplomacy involves us sending lots of loans and money as foreign aid to countries around the world that need it, because for multiple reasons. One, this makes us look like humanitarian. We're helping everyone. We're helping this country out by providing them a loan. We're helping this country out by sending them supplies, all that stuff. But they'll now owe us, right? Remember, like I said, we don't do anything for free. And this is basically making us a creditor, like everyone's going to owe us, if not money, they're going to owe us favors, and they're going to owe us their loyalty. And that's definitely something that's going to be important in the future. And that's definitely a form of imperialism. Unfortunately for Taft, at the end of his presidency, people were not super happy. And even Teddy Roosevelt wasn't very happy. And he was like, I think I should be president again. I think I was just so good at it, and Taft just doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe I should give it another shot. So the Republicans nominate Taft for a second term, but Teddy Roosevelt doesn't give up. Even though his party doesn't nominate him, he decides to run as a third-party candidate, which was a progressive party. He creates his own party called the Bull Moose Party. I know how that sounds, but that was the name of the party, the Bull Moose Party, which was a progressive party. So he's going to run as a third-party candidate. And then the Democrats will be nominating Woodrow Wilson. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it a million more times. Third parties are good for two things. One, getting issues on the table. Two, stealing votes. Number one, do they get issues on the table with the Bull Moose Party? Absolutely. They're going to talk about progressive issues more in this election than any other. Two, does he steal votes? Absolutely. And who's he stealing them from? He's stealing them from Taft, because he's a Republican. So Republicans are split. Do I want to vote for Teddy or do I want to vote for Taft? while since the Republican vote is split, there's not enough for it to be a majority, which allows Woodrow Wilson to gain the majority. You can see on this electoral map, Taft, the main two-party candidate, one of the two, only wins 2 states. This is the first time and only time, I'm pretty sure, we ever see a third party do better than one of our 2 major parties, which is sort of nuts. So because of this, Woodrow Wilson will manage to win the election because the Republican Party looks like it's sort of falling apart. So here comes Woodrow Wilson. Now, we know how I feel about Woodrow Wilson. There's no sense in getting into a lot of details here. We know that I don't necessarily consider him to be a true progressive, but I will say that he does accomplish a few progressive things during his presidency, and pretty much all of them are wrapped up in economics. Now we know, like I said, his foreign policy is going to be involving World War I, so that's why we're not going to talk about his foreign policy right now. That will be a massive portion of next unit, but as far as his priorities at home, the economy was really number 1 on his list. As a true Democrat, he does not believe in tariffs, so he's going to pass the Underwood Tariff Act in 1913 to lower tariffs. That same year, he's going to help pass the 13th Amendment to help legalize the federal income tax. That's the first time we're going to have an income tax. Thank you so much for that 16th Amendment, Wilson. He's going to pass laws about banking to manage our money supply and control inflation. He's going to pass another antitrust act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, which is another effort at controlling those monopolies. He's also going to pass the Fair Trade Act to investigate and stop bad and corrupt business practices. We're also going to get the amendment for women's suffrage during his presidency, and we will also get the 18th Amendment during his presidency, which was definitely a progressive idea. And if you don't remember from civics what 18 was, that is the beginning of prohibition. The 18th Amendment outlaws the production and distribution of alcohol in the United States. And that will, kick off a whole new era and series of issues for the United States. Now, as the progressive era began to close, we have never seen one social movement really change our entire country so quickly in a short amount of time. And it's every aspect of life was changing. I wouldn't even say that in the social movements of the 50s and 60s, I wouldn't even say that we saw that much. I wouldn't even say we saw more change then. This was definitely the most change. We're going to see change for society. We're feeling like the government is more responsible for the lives of people. We want to make sure people have safe places to work. We want to make sure people have safe places to live, that they're going to be healthy, that they're not going to be lied to in products. We're going to be regulating morality with the 18th Amendment banning alcohol. Politics we're cleaning up. We're changing the way elections take place. We're keeping, we've accomplished civil service reform. We're doing a lot of things. Businesses, we're reining them in, stopping monopolies. We don't want them to have too much power in our country. And in the government, the people certainly have a larger voice with the direct election of senators, direct primaries, initiatives, referendums, recalls, all these things. So in the progressive era, we definitely see the relationship between people and the government making entering in an entirely new era.